It is your Classic Metal Show right here on the ClassicMetalShow.com from the Generation Nothing release. That is the title track. And Chris, Metal Church is back.
I am beyond excited that Metal Church gave up their silly notion that it was time to be over and brought it back.
Exactly. And we want to welcome back to the Classic Metal Show founding member, guitarist Kurdt Vanderhoof. Welcome back to the Classic Metal Show, Kurdt.
Hey, thanks for having me, man. It's really good to be here.
Well, Kurdt, I got to tell you, as a longtime Metal Church fan, and the fact that I've hung out with you on a few occasions, and the fact that you participated in a takeover show of the Classic Metal Show, I am just absolutely, and I'm going to sound like a little giddy high school girl here. I'm so grateful you guys decided to put it back together, because 4 years ago when you announced you were calling it quits, Chris and I were just like, oh, no way. And it's just like, this sucks. But now your guys are back, and it was like no time passed at all.
Well, yeah, a few years went. We had to stop. We always knew that, when we pulled the plug on it before, that we would, we knew we would never rule out the possibility of getting back together and getting working again. We just had to stop to change the way we were doing things. We were trying to do things old school way, the way, because the industry, as you know, is very, very different now. And we were trying to do it with record companies and advances and, getting out on the road for long periods of time and things like that, and it's not that we can't do it, but the way we were approaching it burned the band out. And with record companies going under and things like that, there was no money behind us. And all this kind of, the whole upheaval of the music industry really started sucking the life out of it. And I didn't want to start doing something and then get to the point where I hated it. Well, none of us did, because we knew we always wanted to leave that door open. Like when any band breaks up, for the most part, they always know that it's always a window of opportunity to, hey, we're getting back together, that kind of whole thing. So, I think we always knew we would get back together. So, but when we started working on this record, we started really getting excited about the material. So that also helped. Also doing it because we're doing it all ourselves now. We're putting everything out on my label, running it through Rat Pack Records, and we're in control of everything now.
Well,
so
Kurdt,
that changes the whole feel of it, and it makes it really exciting to do it. So
sure. Well, what's the difference between saying we're calling it quits as opposed to say we're going on hiatus? Is there a legal thing with that, or?
No, we probably, I guess looking back, and I've thought about this before, we probably should have said hiatus, an indefinite hiatus, but yeah, at the time we were so, it had nothing to do with internal stuff. It was just, we were busting our ass trying to make this thing happen, and it just wasn't working. We just kept, it just wasn't working for any number of reasons. So it was like, okay, before we start hating each other, because again, like I said, we all still got along and everything, it was just like, let's stop before it gets to the point where we never will be able to work together again. So.
Oh, sure. But now, Kurdt, let's talk about the way the band came back together a little bit. Certainly, three of you were busy with TSO, so it's almost like you weren't totally broken apart. And
Oh no, and Ronnie sang on a couple of Presto Ballet albums, which is my progressive rock band. He did a couple of records with me on that too. So yeah, we were still around each other and talking to each other, and we were all still friends. It had nothing to do with any kind of internal thing. It was all business crap.
Sure. So then, what is the impetus that brings you back together? Was it that you just felt something was missing, or you just didn't have enough metal creativity in your world at this point, or what?
That probably for me, I needed probably more of a metal outlet as well as the prog rock and the classic '70s stuff that I do. But it was just more of the notion that, hey, wait a minute, if we do this now, and we do it like this, basically, I'll make the records and put them out on my label, and we can just do this ourselves. We don't need management. We just need a distributor, and found a kindred spirit in Joe O'Brien at Rat Pack for distribution and promotion, and just was like, that in itself made the whole thing extremely appealing. And look, we don't have to call Germany to find out if we're going to make any money. We don't have to call, and we can be hands-on and do this at our own pace, be it, play every weekend or play, 6 months out of the year. However we decide we want to do it, we can do it. That changed the whole feel of the whole thing. Okay. And that made it very appealing to all of us, you know, just like, hey, we don't have to, you know, we don't have to sit around and do it the old school way, waiting for a label to throw you a bone and throw you scraps and hope that they do something, you know, right. Like getting a big advance on a record and then you never see another dime.
Well, at the same time, though, because you did it in a different process, you know, did it lead to a writing and a creative difference from the past? I mean, certainly it wasn't like the old days where you book studio time and you jump in a room for a month and then you put out a record. Right. You know, obviously I'm going to assume that this was stretched out over a longer period of time and done more technologically with trading MP3s back and forth of ideas and whatnot.
No, not really. I demoed all the songs for the new album, you know, and once everybody, you know, learned the songs and then put their stamp on their parts, then everybody came here and we just recorded it. And, you know, it took, you know, the whole process start to finish took about 6 months, start writing to the finishing of the record.
Excellent. That's very cool.
It was a whole different feel this time, and I think it shows in the material. This is because I really, really, really like this record, and when I listen to it now, I'm really happy with the way it sounds. I'm really happy with the songs. There is a different feel to it, and that was what was lost for a while. And we decided when we got that back that would be the indication that we should continue and, you know, and get back on the horse, so to speak, and get out there.
Sure. So. Well, Kurdt, let me go into something that I'm sure you've heard, and Neely and I. This has been a topic on the show literally since Weight of the World through right now. We cannot figure out why Ronnie gets so much shit from so many people online for his vocal performance. I mean, Neely and I will both tell you, Light in the Dark is one of our collective top 20 albums of all time, metal wise. And,
you know, I really appreciate you saying that too, because I wonder that a lot too. I mean, you know, yeah, he's the third singer, so we knew that, and I warned him extensively when I met him and we decided to, you know, take another shot at being Metal Church with him fronting it. I warned him. But it was just ridiculous. I mean, it was to the point where people just wanted to slam him just because they felt they could. And most of it was coming from people who have no idea what they're talking about, you know. And, I mean, there's one thing, if his voice doesn't appeal to you, that's fine. That's perfectly legit. There's many musicians and bands and singers that they're great at what they do, but what they do doesn't necessarily appeal to me. There's nothing wrong with that. But to take the, you know, just to give him shit about it, you know, it's like, I just wanted to find out who these people and go, well, how's your band doing? You know?
Well, and the one thing that has always been odd to us, and we both have seen Metal Church, you know, with Ronnie several times now, and he does a very, well, no, he doesn't sound like David Wayne, and no, he doesn't sound like Howe either, but he does a very true to the original vocal. Yeah. Performance-wise, it doesn't make sense why people would be. It's not like Vince Neil to John Corabi, to make an example of where one guy sounded one way and another guy sounded another way.
No, Ronnie's a great heavy metal singer, and he does justice to all the songs of the David Wayne era and the Mike Howe era. That's one of the reasons why I was inspired to put Metal Church back together with him, was that he could do it. I mean, and he could do a great job yet when we do new material. He has his identity, too, because he grew up being a fan of the band, so he has all that same influences. So basically, you know, I'm really glad to hear you say that, because he does not deserve the crap that he gets. And the comparisons and everything, you know, yeah, that's going to happen, but most of these haters are just people that just want to be jerks because you can on the internet, you know. And so it really doesn't faze us anymore. We're listening to it. We know he's great. You know, if you don't like his voice, that's fine. But if you want to get on there, you know, the unfortunate thing about the internet, it gives many people opinions that aren't smart enough to have one, and they can say stuff and you know, anonymously, and you know, just dummies. But again, you know, he's getting some props from the people that have heard some of the couple of new tracks, and people are starting to like it. And so I think maybe the tide's changing a bit. I think people are going to start accepting this lineup, and especially start accepting Ronnie as a singer for Metal Church. So.
Well, Kurdt, speaking of lineups, do you keep track of any of the former members of Metal Church?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You know,
yeah, we're all friends.
So what is Mike Howe doing these days?
Mike Howe is a interior light construction guy. He does interior reconstruction houses and stuff like that, and he's raising his family in California.
Sure. And do you ever discuss him missing the business at all, or is that just like...
the business? No, because that when Metal Church officially ended, I mean the 80s, the Mike Howe era officially ended. It was ended by some really, really bad, corrupt management deals and things like that. So everybody was kind of bitter about the whole thing, and it died a horrible death. The hanging in the balance era. And it just, not only was it because heavy metal fell out of favor because of grunge, but it was all the stuff that was going on in Metal Church's business was horrible. It just killed the band.
Sure.
So no, everybody went and got normal jobs and stuff like that.
Right.
Except for me. So.
And Kurt Arrington, how's he doing health-wise? I know one of the reasons...
He's all right. He's not healthy enough to be in the band and that kind of thing.
Sure.
So that was kind of a tough one. So, I mean, it's just one of the things, as we're getting older now, it starts catching up with you if you haven't been taking care of yourself at all, with his diabetes, being on the road and all that kind of stuff makes it kind of impossible for him to be involved.
Right.
Which is really sad. So,
but it is impressive that since the Weight of the World release, your lineup has pretty much stayed the same aside from Jay Reynolds.
Right.
And that makes for a very cohesive unit, which is why I think this new CD, just from the songs that I've heard, is another killer.
Great, yeah. I mean, the response has been just overwhelming just in the past couple of days since we've released a couple of tracks, and again, we're real proud of it. So that's kind of the approach. Then we don't have anybody else telling us, you should do this and it should be this song. We need a single and blah 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 blah. We're just going along the premise that if we all like it and we're all happy with it, chances are most metal fans or Metal Church fans will dig it as well. So that's how we approach it.
So go ahead.
Oh no, that's it basically.
So what is the marketing and promotional strategy for this new release? I mean, obviously one of the reasons you guys took a break there was because of the business being in such disarray and not working in your favor. So what are you going to do different now that's going to make it better for you?
Well, excuse me. Like I said, putting it out on my label for one, which gives us complete artistic and every control and over everything, and with Rat Pack Records, using their distribution network and their promotional situation, it's hands-on everything. So the strategy is basically to use the social media, which is the way records are promoted now. There's a little more print magazines and things like that going on in Europe and the UK, but for most of the world, it's how you work the internet, and that's the strategy. I mean, other than there really isn't any kind of secret magic dust or anything that we're using. We've got somebody now that's working with the band. Do that. The new way the music is, and it doesn't really cost anything. So We're keeping our overhead extremely low. We're picking, we're playing gigs that are good gigs. We're not going to where we're over by the salad bar, and kind of that kind of stuff, which really knocks your self-esteem, out and makes you kind of like, what are we doing, Sure. So we're just we're gonna do completely everything at our way and our pace, but there really isn't any kind of strategy necessarily, other than taking advantage of the new music industry and using the social networking and things like that, using that to our advantage and managing ourselves.
Right. Well, Kurt, let me ask you a question, just based on what I know about you creatively, and this is specific to you more than it is to Metal Church, but when you look at two of your projects, Presto Ballet and Metal Church, they are really creations from you. Every little bit of it, or I don't want to say every little bit of it, but the bulk of it comes from you. The music is written by you, the ideas come from you, etc.
Right.
And then you went and do TSO, which is clearly Paul O'Neill's gig. Yeah. How difficult is it for you as a guy who's obviously very creative in a lot of different areas to walk into somebody else's gig, more or less, and just kind of play the notes?
For TSO, I wasn't playing. I was doing front of house. I was a sound engineer.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah, it was really weird. No, yeah, I was mixing TSO, and I was also working in the studio with him.
Okay. Okay,
Yeah,
so
I wasn't in the band.
so
See, I don't look cool like those guys, so I couldn't be in the band.
is part of it that you don't own a tuxedo? Is that what it is?
Oh no, I probably could have got one, but I don't have long flowing blonde rock hair. So
I hear you, man. How was that experience?
I'm kidding, but no, that was kind of one of the reasons. Because that was one of the reasons. After 6-7 years, I was like, every time I come home from this tour, I got some dough, but I come home with a major identity crisis because I'm sitting out here running sound, which is a very flattering position to be in because they like the sound of my records and things like that. But all my friends are in the band, and I'm out here mixing. Well, okay, I got to go home and learn to play guitar again and go to getting therapy. So.
Sure.
But it was a real flattering gig to have, but that's why I stopped doing it. I haven't done it for a couple of years now because it was like, wait, this is not my gig, and there's a lot of good sound men out there that would kill to have this job, and I'm not into it. So,
and at the same time, there's got to be just a frustration issue for you watching guys that are definitely your contemporaries, Skolnick and Caffery and
all my friends.
Yeah. Well, they're friends, but at the same time, let's be honest. There is that competitive element between all of you metal guitar players. Oh, let me see what I can do if you can do this type of a thing, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, that really didn't happen in TSO with me necessarily. Mainly, it was. I mean, it really wasn't competitive, but I just felt very out of sorts. I felt very out of place.
Okay.
Because, there's, people up there doing what I can do, and I can do that, and that's actually what I do. I fell into the sound gig by accident.
Okay.
And it was like, oh, okay. So there wasn't really necessarily any competitiveness, but I felt very out of my element in that respect.
Sure.
Now, so that was pretty much it,
Sure. Now, how do you personally define what is your element? Because your two main projects, being Presto Ballet and Metal Church, they're so widely different from each other. I cannot even imagine that you have much in a crossover fan base. Yeah, is that fair?
There is a little bit, but not a whole lot. Most of my element means being in a creative place, and I have my involvement in TSO, and I probably will be involved in some respect, in the future, and I'm still very close with everybody involved in all that. But for me, my element is to be in a creative state, or contributing creatively. Where in TSO, I really wasn't doing that, And it was weird because, like, Paul O'Neill does on a bigger scale what I do, Like Metal Church and Presto are kind of my deals. I write the songs, and it's kind of it's my ball, and I'm going home, so sort of thing. And that's what TSO is for Paul. So being in a situation where I'm just kind of, where I'm not contributing creatively or creating anything, playing music, rather than just on a technical end, which I enjoy that too, that's my element when it's all of it put together. That's where I'm happy, and that's when the world makes sense. Is like right now, the world makes sense to me when I'm writing. And right now I'm writing the new Presto album, and so that's when, I wake up in the morning with a purpose, and that makes me feel, okay, this is what I do. Waking up on the road and, going up and setting up, sound equipment is not my bag. So I can do it, but it's not something that I really want to spend the rest of my life doing.
Sure. Well, Kurdt, one question that I've always had in the back of my mind, and even though I've spoken with you a few times, and I never thought to ask it, but it just came to mind just now. There's guitarists out there that have a signature sound, be it a Eddie Van Halen or a George Lynch or a Jimmy Page. If you hear them playing and maybe not know the song or whatever, you know who it is because they have that trademark sound. You have a trademark sound, although unfortunately you're not a household name like an Eddie Van Halen or Yngwie.
Right.
But your trademark sound in three songs that come to mind right off the top of my head is Watch the Children Play, Gods of Wrath, or Temples by the Sea. You have this guitar tone, a certain that is very similar in each of those songs, if you know what I'm saying. What do you how would you describe your signature sound? What is that sound? Nobody else has it.
My sound is I'm a very meat and potatoes guitar player. I'm not much of a lead player. It really has never had any interest for me. I'm a rhythm guitar player, and that's what I enjoy. Like in the middle of a song or something, I get off on doing the chunk, 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 the chunks, and let somebody else do all the blah, 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 who's versed in that. So I really am very comfortable in that. I want to write the riff that the song is, and playing that riff, that's what gets me off. So in that respect, that's could be one of the elements. The actual sound of my guitar is very meat and potatoes, which is a Les Paul straight into a Marshall, and I don't use a lot of gain. I don't use a lot of the modern super crunchy high gain things. I use other guitar players, when they actually hear my sound that I play with, they're shocked at how clean it is.
Yeah,
and because I just don't like the overgain, because to me, when your tone gets that dirty and that electrified, there's no need for any technique in your fingers, or your hand that's picking. Your guitar is so electric that there's just nothing there. So I keep my sound relatively clean. It's certainly not clean, but by comparison, I don't use a high gain. I don't use a lot of gain. And I think that is probably the majority of it, because that's why you hear all the strings on the guitar. You hear all the parts, rather than just a big kind of a, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I know exactly. But there is definitely a signature guitar sound in a metal church song.
Cool, that's great. And it wasn't necessarily planned that way, but I'm kind of glad to hear that, because that's, that gives us our own identity, so to speak.
Yeah, and that's why I was asking, what has created that identity for you in the guitar, part of metal church?
I don't know if there's really, and I think it's just a matter of just continuing to do it. It's not a premeditated thing or anything kind of calculated. It just is what it is. And it just keep doing that and keep doing that, and you keep doing it and you keep doing it. Eventually, you start developing your thing. And I've been fortunate enough to be able to be in the business long enough to let something develop.
Sure.
So, yeah.
Do you believe this is something that John Levin, the guitar player from Doc and formerly of Doro, told us? Was that he believes we were about a month and a half ago, 2 months ago, we were hanging out with those guys when they opened for Van Halen, and so obviously the conversation became Eddie Van Halen. And
right.
His assumption was, as a guitar player, is that guitar players that have a signature sound, most of it just comes from their hands, and it's just almost a natural progression on how each guitar player holds their own guitar and presses on their strings and whatnot.
Absolutely.
And he was adamant that the sound of the individual sound from guitars to guitars, even if they play the same exact guitar, is based solely on their hands. Do you agree with that?
I don't believe it's solely on their hands, but I would say 80% of it is. Okay. Absolutely, yeah. A certain amount of it would be in whatever amps and things like that you're using, but absolutely, at least 80% of that is completely in your fingers. It's how you play, it's how you write, that kind of stuff. It's how you feel the music. If somebody hears a drum beat, what they're going to hear is going to be something different than what I would necessarily hear or want to play. So I agree to that for the most part. Absolutely, yeah.
Very cool. Well, Kurdt, you're back with Metal Church, and we're very glad. I applaud you, and I want to thank you. I mean, it's a thrill for me, because I am such a diehard Metal Church fan. I like Ronnie. I probably email with Ronnie every couple of weeks. He's been on the show numerous times. He's a good dude. I consider him a personal friend. Awesome. I'm glad Metal Church is coming back. And is there anything else about this new release you want to tell us about that we haven't touched on?
Not really, other than it's just a straightforward meat and potatoes metal album. It's not modern metal, and we're not trying to break new ground or be cutting edge or anything. It's just old school metal.
Excellent.
And I have no interest in anything that I do of trying to be edgy and create something new. I just like to create good music, and if that turns out to be something that's new and modern and edgy and changes the world, great. But for me, I'm old school all the way. So this Metal Church record has a lot of elements of the early stuff, but at the same time, it's more matured in a lot of ways because we are. So we didn't, to try to recapture the energy of, 21-year-old kids, making the first record, that'd be great, but, that's kind of like, the lightning in the bottle scenario again. So, again, I think this is one of our best records ever. And I think the songs are mature, and I think that it gets right to the point. It sounds good, and it's got a lot of elements in it, a lot for people to chew on. And I think that's about, I think that's the most important. And it was a very honest record. We made it because we wanted to make the record. We, were playing this because we wanted to, not because we had to, not because we needed to make some money, not because we got to do something to get out on the road and got to get some money to pay bills and child support and whatever. No, we wanted to make this record because we wanted to make the record. We wanted to play music and make music. So I think that when you start at that point, because it's real easy to start doing that, when you've been in the industry a long time, it's real easy to do it from another perspective. This one, we came from the right place. Whether everybody perceives that or not is another thing, but that's, something that you can't control, because there's always going to be somebody that doesn't like what you do, so that's fine. But this record was made for the right reasons.
Excellent. All right, well, go visit Metal Church over there at their website at metalchurchmusic.com, and the new CD comes out when?
October 22nd.
October 22nd, excellent.
And if you go to Metal Church Facebook pages, you can hear 2 new tracks.
Excellent.
You can hear a song called Scream, and then the title track, Generation Nothing.
Excellent. All right, man. Well, again, Kurdt, it's always a pleasure to speak with you. Thanks for taking the time to talk to us here on the Classic
Metal
Show.
We are going to be hitting the road. We are going to be hitting the road in the middle of February. So hopefully we'll be coming through town. So
excellent. All right. Sounds good. And, well, before we let you go, Kurdt, I don't know if we've asked this to you before, since it's been a while since you've been on the show, but how has Lemmy from Motorhead influenced your career?
Oh, my God. Well, I mean, I think he, kicked down a lot of doors of how to be aggressive in music. I think he kind of wrote the book on, it's your delivery and it's your attitude, and it's that. It's not how pretty you are, certainly. So, which is certainly a very, very important element to keep alive, because, when the MTV thing hit, certainly things weren't necessarily about that. I can't really put my finger on one particular thing, but he was just a huge inspiration when Motorhead started breaking. When we discovered him before they had even been here, listening to that stuff, because my transition in the history of my history in the first generation punk rock movement, that was kind of the transition point, hearing Motorhead going, wow, you can do this whole thing, this energy and the angst and stuff of this punk rock thing, but you can translate it into something more powerful. So hearing Motorhead do that, I was like, okay, there it is. And then everything followed suit after the Maidens and the Priests and all that kind of stuff. So,
Excellent. All right, the new Metal Church is called Generation Nothing. And Kurdt, as a tradition, we always let the artist pick a song off the new release and maybe tell us a quick story about it.
One of my favorite tracks on the record is Suicide.
Any story behind it?
Well, again, this album has a running theme to it, and Generation Nothing is not necessarily about a particular age group, even though a lot of it is. It's also about just the way society now has become so separate, and so everything is virtual, that especially, kids and stuff growing up today, they don't learn how to do anything for real. It's all virtual. Like learning to play guitar is now a video game. They come home from school when we used to go out and play, and they sit and they become just completely socially inept, and the place where I'm living now is, you can see that a lot in this town, which is basically I wrote the song about a dead city. It's small town America, and there's really not a whole lot of hope for this place. And, seeing that kind of thing. So that's kind of the whole theme of the album. But Generation Nothing is, Suicide is basically about how we're living and how people are killing themselves and not knowing it by eating stuff that isn't food, because now everybody's getting morbidly obese, and especially kids, and cancers and all these diseases and all this stuff. And it's all from stuff that's being fed to us, and it's everybody's killing themselves and they don't really know it. And that's kind of what that's about. And that's not only physically too, that's also mental.
Exactly. All right, well, here it is. This is Brand New Metal Church from Generation Nothing, and this is Suiciety exclusively here
on your classic metal show.